Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for participating today in our webinar. Of course, the topic is, are you prepared for a safe return to work? And it's my great pleasure to introduce Matthew Cooper, one of the directors of Woodhouse Workspace. He's got a great presentation ahead with some top tips, so pens at the ready. If you've got any questions, please do feel free to enter them into the chat or raise your hand at the end of the presentation. Matthew's going to speak for about 25 minutes, and he'd be delighted to answer any questions after that. So over to you, Matthew, and thank you so much to Woodhouse Workspace for sponsoring this webinar.
Thank you, Mary, and I hope I don't bore everyone. You're probably all thinking horrors, 25 minutes of speech. So we'll try and keep it sort of short and sweet. Can you see the screen okay, Mary?
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Good.
So again, thank you very much to the Chamber for organising this webinar and including Woodhouse to speak. As we were just saying before everyone joined, weren't we, that it's a very relevant timing. I think every company globally will be thinking about this topic at the moment. So as Mary said, I'm Matthew Cooper, one of the owners of Woodhouse Workspace, and our core business is designing and building workspaces that help businesses work smarter. And right now we obviously have these challenges that have come upon us rather abruptly, and the government's latest guidance is the sort of key 7 points are shown on the slide there now. So as a company, we've been investigating, well, what are the challenges that are facing employers? There's a lot of them, and they will vary for different companies, but one of the key things here is risk mitigation. So the government have put it as their top point that we need to do a risk assessment for our workspaces, and we need to minimize those risks as practically possible. Obviously one of the big questions and challenges that faces particularly London businesses, but also some businesses in Hertfordshire, is public transport. And how do we provide for our staff or mitigate that risk of public transport? And a number of companies that we're working with, talking to, are starting off by bringing back staff who don't use public transport. So those that cycle or walk or drive to work, bringing them back to the office first, as most companies won't be able to bring everyone back yet anyway because of the social distancing. So as a company, we sort of put our heads together and thought we'd try and brain out the challenges that face employers, and there's a number on the screen there as we've discussed about the travel to and from work. It could be about visitors, how you manage those that are coming to the office. It could be about goods in and out. It could be the processes and procedures and hygiene. There's a lot of them, but what we've done is pulled together a 12-point plan of practical solutions which can help mitigating these risks. I believe these slides will be shared afterwards, and there's details on our website of these 12 points as well, but I'll give you a brief overview now. The first one here is deep cleaning. There's a number of you will have cleaning contractors in place for your workspaces already, and no doubt had discussions and plans put in place for this. The last point there about UV biodecontamination, just highlight that briefly. If you have a case of an employee with symptoms of COVID-19 or even confirmed COVID-19, then you can hire in a specialist company to decontaminate the space using UV light. And it's this machine which you can see on in the image here on the screen. And it's a very fast and effective way of decontaminating a space. The next section here is about Sanitisation Solutions, and I've no doubt that a number of you will have put in hand sanitizer dispensers and various products around the workspace. But if you haven't, we have a number of products that we can supply, ranging from sensor taps to foot operated dispensers, ones for high volume versus low volume of people. We have various products which include bins and PPE dispensers and so on. And it's about ensuring that there is enough within your workspace to support the staff that use it. So there's no risk of them going without correct PPE or sanitization. And the sort of main image there shows this large spray canister, which is a surface sanitizer spray for very fast and effective sanitization. If you have a building which has a reception and some washrooms and meeting rooms, shared T-point areas and so on, it's a fast, effective solution. The next section here is around and we've seen a lot about masks and gloves and so on, which we can provide, but more interestingly is a individual well-being pack, which has been very popular amongst the big corporates, is to provide their staff with an individual well-being pack. So a pack which has some masks, some gloves, a little hand sanitizer gel, a little sanitizer spray, and your sort of weekly allowance of product in one go. Proximity screens are proving to be very necessary in our workspaces. We've spent a long time as a industry refining how we can fit as many people as possible into an office space without it being too uncomfortable, which has meant that it's very difficult to socially distance ourselves. One way that this can be mitigated is by using proximity screens around your desk. And there's a lot of products that have come to the market now, and some very nice products, some products that are made of recyclable cardboard and felt, as well as your sort of acrylic and perspex. So there's a lot of products available, and it's about finding the right ones for your situation. I think one of the key points from Boris's last speech was stay alert, and signage is a great way of keeping people alert. We do have a catalogue of options which is available to download off our website, and ranging from banners to vinyl, stickers, self-adhesive, and not a whole range of products which can be branded to your own branding if required as well. I guess one of the key areas within our workspaces that will be a concern for staff using the space is washrooms, as they are typically within an office. You typically have shared washrooms, so they will be a high risk space, and what we'd like to provide is solutions which remove the touch points. So where you have taps putting in sensor operated taps, sensor operated soap dispensers, changing the locks on the cubicles so that they're either automatic, or you could have retrofitted products to the bottoms of doors so they can be opened with a foot instead of the hand. So there's a number of different products to try and make your washrooms touch-free. And whilst we're on door solutions, there are some excellent products which can be retrofitted to push plates and pull handles. As you can see on the image, some of them dispense a little bit of sanitizer as you push them. Some are as simple as a copper sleeve to fit over a pull handle. Again, it's another way of trying to mitigate the risk. The building entry systems is perhaps slightly more intrusive for a number of companies. This will be something looked after by the landlord rather than yourselves as tenants. But looking at ways of removing touch points, so whether it's access entry systems using Bluetooth on phones, it could be, excuse me for a minute. Fever screening CCTV systems, which can highlight anyone that's coming into the building which has a body temperature above the recommended level, and maybe they don't realise they're not well, or are the sort that will just go above and beyond and rather go to work and keep working. That product will identify those that perhaps should keep out of the building until their body temperature is back to normal. Again, number 9, ventilation is perhaps something that your landlord will do. For some, if you're in self-contained buildings, it may be within your remit, and can't be stressed highly enough how important it is to ensure your ventilation systems are maintained and cleaned. You should have regular maintenance programs in place for ventilation anyhow, and if you do, then your regular maintenance provider will look after this for you. If you don't, then we'd encourage that is put into place. And leading on from ventilation, if you have a space which is very poorly ventilated, you could be in a very old building, or you may have an area within your building which is it doesn't have any access to external windows. There are products that portable products, as you can see on the screen, which can be placed within an office space or a workspace and can purify the air on an ongoing basis to ensure that any contamination in the air is filtered out. Section 11 is workplace or workspace refresh, which is perhaps more of our typical offering, where if you have an office space which is currently empty because all your staff are working from home, it may be a good time to look at a bit of a refresh of the space, look at decorating the walls, replacing some of the ceiling tiles which are perhaps got a bit dirty or stained. You may want to relamp your light fittings and so on. It's a good opportunity to get into the office now whilst it's empty and give it a bit of an upgrade. And the final point here is around future workspace support. So what we're hearing from a lot of our clients and prospects and contacts at the moment is that they're encouraging staff to continue working from home until the workspace is safe, which could be 1st of September, maybe October. Some companies even talking about January next year. And I think what we're finding is the larger corporates are typically pushing that date backwards with a view to ensuring that the space is as safe as it can be. But what we have to be aware of is if we're then encouraging staff to work from home for a longer period, is that we are supporting them with the necessary equipment to work from home. What we don't want to happen is that staff are encouraged to work from home, but then find they have problems with backache because they don't have an appropriate chair to sit on, or it could be their desk is actually at the wrong height, or they're using a laptop screen which isn't good for your eyesight over a long period of work. So it's important that if you are encouraging staff to work from home for a longer period of time, that you support them with the correct equipment to do so. That was a fairly quick tour of the 12-point plan, and maybe a little bit sort of mesmerizing all in one go. What we are offering you and companies currently is the following 3 stages. So number 1 here is, if you have a floor plan of your workspace, it could be a PDF or a CAD, or even an image of some sort. It doesn't have to be very detailed, but some form of floor plan, and you can send that to us, and we will annotate that floor plan with our suggestions based on the 12-point plan that we've just been through. The different products that you could put in, some alterations you could make to the layout, and how many people you could fit into each meeting room, or how many you can use, and so on. And that's something we're offering completely free of charge. Stage 2 is a chargeable exercise to actually re-space plan your workspace based on the current guidelines from the government. So option 1 is a sort of high level list of suggestions. Option 2 here is looking at, okay, how many can you actually fit into your space on the current guidelines? Can we move your desks around to fit in more people rather than just alternating desks? Could you repurpose some meeting rooms into offices or desk space? And so on, and drawing up the sort of best space plan that you could do under the current guidelines. And the third option here is workspace consultancy, where we will work with you and the key stakeholders for your business in identifying what the business will look like over the next few years, and how we could align your workspace to suit that best. So we will get under the skin of the business with a workspace study and doing some workshops and some surveys to your staff. We'll then follow that up by identifying the opportunities, taking on board the feedback that we have gained, and then produce a strategy and a transition plan to go from where we are now to that future state. So for example, it could be that you have all of your staff working from home at the moment, and you don't have enough space within your workspace to bring them all back to the office whilst maintaining social distancing. And it's actually working quite well. Everyone's managed to work from home, and you've got the IT set up to be able to do so. But there will no doubt need to be some changes to the workspace and some new procedures and ways of working going forward to maximize the opportunity for your business. So it's about understanding from the users of the space how they would like to work, and from the key stakeholders how they see it working going forward. This is quite an involved project, and one that you will get a great return on the investment. and we'd be very happy to discuss any of these three options with anyone on the call. I think that probably brings me to the end of the presentation, Mary.
Thank you, Matthew, very much.
Too boring?
I think there's a lot of content to digest. It can be a little bit overwhelming, but it's really good to know that companies like yours are there to help us through the process. It is the opportunity for questions to everybody, all participants on the chat at the moment. If you'd like to type any of your questions into chat or raise your hand. I'm not sure I can see everybody currently because I think we're still on Matthew's screen. But what struck me, a couple of things, is if I can make an observation, is that signage, I think, could be really crucial, really very vital. When we go out into public spaces currently, I can see that people, members of the public, are just more relaxed because they're not reminded all the time. So at the workplace, I think that's a really great feature that you've offered. But let's see if we've got any questions or any hands up. I don't see. Oh, yes, I do. Indira?
Hi there.
Hi.
Hello. I was just writing it, but I'll just say it now. Hi, Matthew, or to anybody who can answer it. I'm a self-employed person, so I'm a therapeutic counsellor, and I just wondered if you knew, I don't know if this is a suitable question or not, but I wondered if you knew how it leaves us with our insurance about covering us for working face to face. I don't know if that's a question for you or not. I am waiting for my insurance to come back. If that's not a suitable question, I can ask another one, but I don't know if you know more than me.
Could you just explain your question a little bit more there?
Sure. So I'm a therapeutic counsellor. I work with clients on a one-to-one basis.
Right.
And I wondered how this will leave me if I want to continue working with clients on a face-to-face, one-to-one, going forwards, giving the risks. There are some risks involved going forwards. So from a indemnity insurance point of view, I wondered if you had any views about that.
A great question, India, and it's not something that I've come across yet. We can certainly advise on your space if you need, without understanding what your space looks like or how big it is or where you meet people.
So it's right behind me.
Yep.
And I've got one chair there, and I've got the other one is just in front of it, but I've moved it so my air system can hit me. So it's two chairs, and that's my therapy room you're actually looking at now.
Right. And this is in your home somewhere?
Yeah, it's in my loft space. So there's very few touch points to get into the room, and I offer them wash facilities on the way. I've got sanitisation property hand gels on the table. So I've already been thinking about touch points, minimal washing. My cleaner comes in regularly. I'm thinking about those common sense things, but that's as far as I've got.
Yeah, sure. And there is a risk assessment template on our website which you can download.
Okay.
And I'd recommend that you run through that. You've probably covered off most of it, if not all of it, just in your own thought process anyway. It is common sense. I suppose the challenge for you is that you don't know about who's coming, if they have had any symptoms or not, or if they are well or not.
Yeah.
And then if you have other people in your home as well as yourself, you've got to think about them using the same space afterwards. I would have thought that PPE would be very important for you and your clients. So having a suitable mask on, and then desanitizing. I'll say desanitize. That's not quite the right word. Is it sanitizing the space
Yeah.
after they've left. I mean, if it's in your loft and you have a handrail up your stairs, for example, just having a simple spray sanitizer solution so that you can spray the handrail after the client has left. We've also, within our own workspace, we have a sign-in sheet for all visitors, which now includes a term that they confirm they have not had, to their knowledge, any symptoms of COVID-19, just to make people think before they go any further.
I think that was the other thing I was just going to say, and then I'll go quiet for other people to ask their questions. But I was looking for, I don't know if you have a sort of paragraph that I can improvise and use to communicate to clients our expectations of each other.
Good question. And if you just want to drop me a line, Indira, I'll certainly send over a copy of what we've put on our sign-in sheet.
Okay, thank you.
Can't promise it's the be-all and end-all, but
can I also just recommend, Indira, it's probably prudent to, as you say, contact your insurance provider or your broker, and they really will, in a more detailed way, be able to answer that question, I think. I can see that we've got questions now coming up in the Zoom group chat. Matthew, I don't know if you can see those alongside me, but it might be worth addressing if you don't mind. We've currently got 4 questions on there.
Yeah, certainly.
Do you want me to read them out? Is that easier?
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Any advice for when you're visiting other companies? That's asked of Denise Austin.
So I think I would be finding out before going what their policy is. If they have a policy in place for when their visitors arrive, we've certainly put one in place within our own workspace. Do you, excuse me, do you need to take any particular PPE with you? And have they taken the necessary actions to ensure that their space is as safe as possible? There is a poster which has been issued by the HSE for companies to put up at their entrance, which has, I think, about 5 bullet points on it, which says we have mitigated risks, we have made it safe. I can't remember all the 5 points off the top of my head, but could share it with the attendees. And it would be worth looking out for that poster when you are going to another space.
Thank you. There's another question from Melanie Lord. Did Matthew say something about copper sleeves for door handles? I did.
So, as I think has been quite sort of widely publicised, copper is the COVID-19. They understand doesn't last more than 4 hours on copper, whereas other products it may last up to 72 hours. So if you have a pull handle on a door, which someone with COVID-19 pulls, if you can replace that, or if you can retrofit a copper sleeve around that pull handle, the number of people that will touch that door handle whilst it is contaminated will be greatly reduced. So they're very simple, cost-effective solutions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. We have a question from Cheryl Miles. Are your services available countrywide?
Yeah, certainly. So we, our head office is in Hatfield, and we do cover the UK. Yep.
Brilliant. So you can help with the workforce nationwide. Question from Vicky Foster. Companies that provide breakout or relaxing areas, should they now just be temporarily unavailable?
Yes, that is the ideal from a safety point of view. Albeit, you still have to have lunch as an individual. So there are things that can be done to mitigate the risk without completely shutting them off. by maximising the number of people in there, by having a procedure about what food is and isn't allowed. So if you provide food for your staff, ensuring that it's all pre-prepared, packaged food, rather than food which has to be prepared on site, and maximising the number of individuals at each table, having a hygiene procedure in place so that after a table has been used, it is then sanitised with a spray when you're finished. So there are different things that can be done to mitigate that risk without completely shutting off a communal area.
I think it's an excellent question. I think when we talk, I think some companies, for instance, certainly some we go and visit from a chamber perspective, have implemented no eating at your desk policies. And therefore, you need a space where people can safely go to eat their lunch, but also get away from that workspace for a sense of well-being. So if those solutions exist, I'm sure some of our attendees today would be more interested in those. Do we have any other questions? Any show of hands? I can't see any more exactly on there. Matthew, I think it would be interesting if you could share with us from the conversations that you've had with either existing companies that you work with or those that are looking to get back safely, what percentage of those do you think will have a large percentage of their workforce either working at home for the next couple of months beyond some of the relaxed dates, or even into next year? Do you think it will be much more of a trend to be, you know, having employees work from home?
Yeah, very much so. I guess the bulk of the companies that we have been talking to are based in London, so they have this issue with the public transport. But we're also working with some of the local Hertfordshire-based companies. There's one on Hatfield Business Park who have, I think it's 1,800, or they did have about 1,800 in their head office there, and they don't believe that they'll have more than 1,000 going back after lockdown per day. So they'll then be doing some form of rotation basis, or another way of working it, so that more people are working from home as well as coming to the office. And I think what's been interesting is this has been a huge working from home experiment, and it's actually worked okay for most people. There are some obviously that can't work from home, or it doesn't work so well. I've asked my wife to take the kids out whilst I'm doing this webinar, for example, and thankfully the broadband hasn't dropped out yet. But it's been a remarkable experiment, and I think the larger the company, the greater the risk, the more cautious they are. So the bigger companies are pushing it out. From what we're hearing, they're pushing that date back, and as I said, from anywhere between September and January next year, before they start having any staff coming back at all. And even then, it's going to be starting off with a small amount and gradually upping the number. But on working from home, I'm sure that a lot of people will be continuing some working from home going forward. If you have a suitable setup at home to work from home, we've just found it in our own experience at Woodhouse that it gives you an opportunity to actually get your head down and get some productive time if you have the right setup at home. You do lose that connection with your colleagues a little bit, and there's some different things that different companies have done to try and keep up that connection, but there's nothing like being together in a space, which I'm sure we all know. But you don't need to do both all of the time. So what I think will happen, and this is just a personal opinion, is that companies will have less space proportioned for desk areas, and more space proportioned to communal areas and collaboration spaces. And we've just had an inquiry from someone on Hatfield Business Park, again a different client, where they have approximately 100 staff in an office space, and they're looking to reduce the desks from 75 currently down to about 30, and having a greater area for collaboration and meetings and training and demonstration rooms, so that when you come to the office, you come for that piece of collaboration and you come to learn. And if you're doing work which requires you to sit at a desk, well, you do that on the days when you're at home, because that's a great space to do it.
Good answer. Thank you so much for that. And I think also about the number of us that want to go back to the office. Not everybody does. I'm sure lots of people are enjoying that. There's a balance and a place for both. But for those who will be asking, can I please get back to the workplace? And I think mental health and well-being and those topics are really important. So if businesses do or don't open straight away when they're able to, I guess they have to afford or would like to afford staff members the option to get back to work, not just work from home. Oh, I can see
Absolutely.
a number of questions that have come in. Thank you. Can Matthew tell us more about the individual PPE packs that are available? Do these have to be purchased in large numbers?
Yes, we do have a minimum order quantity. I'm sorry, I just can't recall what that number is off the top of my head. But what I would say is that if that minimum order quantity is over what you require, you can just buy the products yourselves. So buy the number of masks that you need, the number of gloves individually, and then package them up yourself. It's not.
It's a great idea. And certainly people can get in touch with you directly if they need to drill down more on that detail. Another question, if that's okay, from Rowan O'Duffy. We have a small team working in an office space, planning to return to the office next week with risk assessment in place. Do you think it will be an issue to start back next week if we believe it's safe to do so? Thank you, Rowan.
That is a tricky question to answer without knowing what the space looks like. And more than happy, Rowan, if you'd like to drop a line to me with a floor plan, so that we can give you some sort of relevant response. But just by going from what it says on the question, and my own personal opinion is that I don't think it's a problem if you've done your risk assessment. And back to what you said, Mary, about some staff wanting to go back to the office, we do have a number of clients that have allowed individuals back to their office already because they don't have appropriate working situation to work from home. We have one of our staff members working in our office currently on that basis. I guess we're kind of expecting Boris to do another speech soon. Mary, do you know when he's planning that?
Do you know, if I could get into Boris's mind and landscape, I probably wouldn't be on this call right now. So we'll just park that, I think. We do have another question though, Matthew. And I appreciate it might be a tricky one, but from Nick Mickelson, do you have any thoughts on the different types of masks that are available? Because of course we've got recipes online of how to do it yourself, and we've got lots of home crafters making these things all the way up to the PPE that's required at the NHS level.
And I'm by no means a guru on masks, so whatever I say is not scientifically proven by any stretch of the imagination. But from how I understand it, the washable masks are a good solution if you are an employee going to an office workspace and back that is not a sort of a high risk environment. If you are dealing in one-on-one, like Indira there, it would be worth having a surgical mask so that it has so that you can't take in any contamination. If it's if you're out traveling or going to a shops or something, then the standard disposable mask, in my opinion, is okay. But that is just my opinion.
Thank you so much for that. A couple more questions have come in. One from Cheryl Miles. Do risk assessments need to be published online, or can they be published internally? Government suggests they do, however, it's not clear.
I wasn't aware that they were suggesting it needed to be published online, so I'd have to research that myself. I would, from my very limited understanding, it's about assessing the risk with your own workspace. So publishing it online, I don't know, is that so that other visitors know that you've done it? I'm sorry, I'd have to pass on that one and research it myself.
Okay, thank you. A question. What percentage of businesses, Matthew, do you think have COVID risk assessments already in place? Because of course, for some people, it will be a call to action for the very near future, and for others, it will be further into the future.
Yeah, I'll be completely stabbing in the dark on that answer. But what I would be very surprised at any business that did reopen its doors without doing a risk assessment, as I think it's been made very clear in the guidelines from the government that it's the most important thing to do is a risk assessment. So I'd question any business that has opened their doors and hasn't got one.
So perhaps in that regard, going back to the question before, do risk assessments have to be published online, or can they be published internally? It might be a good idea to have access to them to show as evidence if you needed it, I guess.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept.
So I think we've answered a lot of questions, but there are still an awful lot of questions to be answered. And that's the nature of what we're working in and around right now. It's unprecedented, as that word's been used so many times. I'm just wondering, in summary, Matthew, if there's anything that you could advise our participants on this call today, if they were going to go away and do 3 things as takeaways afterwards, what would those be so that they can get back to work safely?
Thanks, Mary. Well, whilst we're on the subject of risk assessments, that's got to be number 1. And number 2, drop us a line with your space plan, and we will provide a response with our suggestions and thoughts. And that's completely no obligation. And number 3, ensure that the users of your space have enough supply of personal protection equipment and sanitizer. Is that simple enough?
That's perfect. And I think we all need to implement that wherever we're working, whether that's from home, whether that's from a collaborative space, or from an established corporate space. So thank you very much. I think we need to be agile. We need to be very mindful of the regulations and adapt that in the workplace. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, Matthew.
No, thank you.
Oh, and thank you very much. I hope that everybody's found that really useful. Matthew has offered to kindly support all of the participants on the call today with a service. The slides will be made available, as I understand, through colleagues when they send out our summary email. So please, if you do have more questions, reach out to Matthew and take it from there. I would encourage you all to visit quite regularly when you can, www.hertschamber.com, as Alison and the team are adding webinars with relevant topics daily, weekly, so on and so forth. Please look at those and book online accordingly. We have come to the end of our scheduled session. Thank you so much for participating. I'm really impressed that so many people were able to take this time to dedicate attention to a really serious topic matter to get us back to work safely. Thank you so very much. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary.